The city of Tyre. We're actually going to look at fulfilled prophecies in the Bible. Have you ever wondered about prophecies in the Bible that were not related to Jesus, that were fulfilled? The ones about Jesus get all the attention. There are prophecies in the Bible that are not about Jesus, his return, or the millennium reign. Shocking, I know. We can look at them and determine for ourselves if the Bible is true and reliable. First off, I would like to do a brief review of the likelihood of all of the prophecies just on Jesus being fulfilled by random chance. There was a book some years ago that put it like this. Take the state of Texas, fill it with quarters 3 feet deep. Mix in there somewhere is 1 quarter painted red. Now, blindfolded, someone has to wade out there in the sea of quarters and give them one chance, only one chance of picking a single quarter and having that quarter be red. That is the likelihood of all of the prophecies of Jesus being fulfilled by random chance. Here's your blindfold. Good luck. Keep that in mind when you look at these prophecies and ask yourself, could that happen on their own? I say this because critics of the Bible say you can just say anything and eventually it will come true, or say it just hasn't happened yet. I could see that if it were general or vague. Eventually there will be an earthquake that will devastate California, or California will fall into the sea. It just hasn't happened yet. With that argument, they point at the prophecies of Damascus. I know all of you were talking about this just last night. So let's take a look at Isaiah 17:1. Isaiah 17:1. This is the divine revelation about Damascus. Damascus will no longer be a city. It will become a pile of rubble. By now you realize why prophets were not invited to parties. I checked several translations and they say the same thing. Damascus will no longer be a city. The prophecy has not been fulfilled yet. There is not a date on when Damascus will be destroyed, but it will be. There is no date on when Damascus was founded. From what I have been able to find out, Damascus was founded shortly after the scattering from the Tower of Babel. Damascus is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, and God said it will be a pile of rubble. Damascus, founded some 5,000 years ago, will be destroyed. The Bible says so. Now, how many of you have ever heard of a man in the Bible named King David? In 2 Samuel chapter 5, the city of Tyer sent cedar trees and craftsmen to build David a palace. The city-state of Tyer was a close ally of David and helped Israel on several occasions. This is about 12 miles north of Israel. But this was not the case later on. In time, they turned against Israel and God. They were warned, and they did not listen. Around 1010 BC, David was crowned king of Israel. 413 years later, in 597 BC, Babylon conquered Jerusalem. Speaking judgment on the city of Tyre through the prophet Ezekiel, God said to Tyre, Ezekiel 26:3-6. So this is what the Almighty Lord says. I am against you, Tyre. I will bring many nations against you as the waves of the sea rise. They will destroy the walls of Tyre and tear down its towers. They will sweep up the dust and turn Tyre into a bare rock. It will become a place by the sea where people spread their fishing nets. I have spoken, declares the Almighty Lord. It will become a prize for the nations. The people in the villages and on the mainland will die in battle. They will know that I am the Lord. Ezekiel 26:14. God continued, I will turn you into bare rock. You will become a place to spread fishing nets. You will never be rebuilt. I, the Lord, have spoken, declares the Almighty Lord. Some of these are mentioned several times in several verses, so I will not mention all of them. But let's take a look at the key points. God said, bring many nations against you. Walls and towers will be torn down. Sweep up the dust and turn Tyre into a bare rock. a place to spread fishing nets. It will never be rebuilt. I found verse 6 particularly interesting. The people in the villages and on the mainland will die in battle. That part is very interesting. The mainland we will get back to later. The villages is saying it's not going to be good to be their neighbor, living next door or around them. Remember the old saying about company you keep. And finally, they will know that I am the Lord. That all sounds dramatic. Let's see how they were fulfilled. We'll start with the old city of Tyre. It was on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. There was an island about 1,500 feet off the coast. As far as I've been able to find, the island was uninhabited by any significant population or used. It simply isn't mentioned. Tyre was a large, powerful, walled city. I could not find the exact date Ezekiel wrote this. At the start of the chapter 26, Ezekiel put a date referencing the Amplified is more detailed. It reads, Ezekiel 26:1. Now, in the 11th year, on the first day of the month after the capture of King Jehoram, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Jehoram reigned 598 to 597 BC. He reigned for 3 months. It literally, if you take the actual time, it was 3 months and 10 days, basically, in the siege of Babylon. 586 and different calendar systems, etc. So you're always going to see about. So what happened to Tyre? First off, the Babylonians came through. Tyre resisted. I could not find a date, but Tyre seems to have been attacked shortly after Ezekiel gave this warning. And that was shortly after Jerusalem was conquered. The siege of Tyre went on for 13 years, according to one historian. It was a large seaport and a major shipping power. They were making money on trade, so Babylon would not have been able to cut off their food supply, water, or help. Tyre could have brought in more weapons, troops, food, and other supplies. With that perspective, a 13-year siege is possible. Eventually, the old city of Tyre was destroyed. They just moved the city to the island. Babylon didn't have a navy, so they secured the coast and moved on. That was around 580 BC. Around 10 years after that, the prophecy of chapter 26 timeline fits with the margin of error. Around 250 years later, in 332 BC, Alexander the Great came through, determined to conquer Tyre as it was a Persian port, but Alexander also didn't have a navy. So he scraped the old ruins of Tyre and dumped them into the sea, leaving bare rock, sweeping up the dust, making a causeway to the island, destroying the island city, leaving it a peninsula to this day. After Alexander the Great, Tyre never regained its glory and slowly declined, but their struggle or punishment was not done yet. 268 years later, in 64 BC, Rome conquered the area. Then Muslims conquered Tyre in 638 AD. Then, 486 years later, European Crusaders conquered the area in 1124 AD. Then, 167 years later, led by Marmaduke, Muslim retook the area in 1291 AD and reduced Tyre to ashes. None of these helped the urban renewal program. Small towns around the area ruined. Tyre was abandoned for the next 300 years. There have been small settlements in the area in between the conquerings, but nothing substantial. They also suffered destruction. Today, there is a small fishing village there of about 200 people. So let's check on the list God said would happen. Ezekiel 26:3. Bring many nations against you. Check. Ezekiel 26:4. Walls and towers will be torn down. Check. Ezekiel 26:4 and 14. Sweep up the dust and turn Tyre into bare rock. Check. Ezekiel 26:5 and 14. A place to spread fishing nets. Check. Ezekiel 26:14. Will never be rebuilt. We will come back to that. Going back to verse 6, what I found interesting if we look closer at the area, Ezekiel 26:6, the people in the villages and in the mainland will die in battle. God is saying it's not going to be good to be their neighbor, and the word mainland Why would the word mainland be mentioned when it was only a mainland city? God predicted the island city before it existed and said everyone on the mainland would die. I could find no mention of the city on the island. If there were two cities, half on the island and half off, there would have been some kind of mentioning of it. So there are two last points to address. Will never be rebuilt. If you pull up a map of the Middle East on your phone, you will see a dot that says where Tyre is. Some say, see, false prophecy. The whole Bible's been proven wrong. It's all fake. Not true. Looking at the meaning and intent of the words, what is said about Tyre, it will not be a regional power. It will not be significant. It will not be thought of. It will be no power, influence, control, or security. It will have nothing. It will be insignificant. Ezekiel 26, 3-7. Tyre is the city at the entrance of the sea. It is the merchant to the nations. Say to Tyre, this is what the Almighty Lord says. Tyre, you used to brag about your perfect beauty. Your home is the sea. Your builders made you beautiful, perfect. Your builders made all your boards from pine trees from the mounts of Haran. They took cedar trees from Lebanon to make masts for you. They made your oars from oaks in Bashan. They made your deck from pine trees on the shores of Cyprus. It had ivory set in it. Your sails were made from the fine embroidered linen from Egypt. They were like your flags. Your awnings were violet and purple. They came from the coast of Eliasa. It goes on, and you can read it on your own if you want. It's 2.5 chapters, and we have no time for that. But this is telling us it will lose its beauty and opulence. Ezekiel 27, 10 and 12. People from Persia, Lud, and Put were soldiers in your army. They hung their shields and helmets inside you. Their victories made you look good. People from Avid and Hamath were guards all around your walls. People from Gamad guarded your towers. They hung their shields all around your walls, making your beauty perfect. People from Tarshish traded with you because you were so very rich. They exchanged silver, ivory, tin, and lead from your merchants. This tells us it had wealth from trade. It had military power, influence, and security. It had prosperity, and it was going to lose it all. It would not have to be abandoned for the prophecy to be met. It just needs to be insignificant. Keep in mind, this is a desert region. Fresh water is flowing out into the ocean, so it's only used to wash fishing nets. There have been several attempts to rebuild Tyre. Wars have broken out and people have died unexpectedly, ending the plans. I remember a map showing the Middle East on the news, showing the city of Tyre, though they were talking about something that's going on in Iraq. Nothing even close to it. Why would they show an insignificant fishing village when they're talking about something over in Egypt or Iraq? But showing Tyre on a map, the world is trying to create the impression that it is there, to undermine the Bible. If they want to prove the Bible wrong, they need to rebuild the city. Try it. I dog dare them. Lebanon has been building up around the harbor, claiming it to be the city of Tyre, claiming it to be a tourist attraction for others to see and think it's Tyre. It's next to Tyre. That doesn't make it Tyre. The southern harbor of Tyre has been long unusable. The northern harbor is still used for small fishing operations and recreation. True to God's word in Ezekiel prophecy, the city of Tyre was completely destroyed, swept up, and dumped in the sea. It's bare rock and a place to spread fishing nets. Keep in mind, in order for them to claim Tyre to be rebuilt, it would need to have a significance of some kind, be significant in some way, have influence, something. What they built around it may have a population of around 135,000. They only claim it to be a tourist attraction. It's not significant in any way, other than some coffee shops. It's a town. So will never be rebuilt. Check. They have been trying to make it seem like something's there. They've been trying to make it something for years, and it's not. We established earlier Tyre was a beautiful city. Wealth from trade flowed through them. They had military power, influence, and security. They had prosperity and opulence. It's easy to think they put their trust in things of this world. We would be surprised if they weren't doing idol worship too. I was surprised that I could not find anything on this, what the people of Tyre worship. Carthage had child sacrifice. Others in the area worship the Baals or Ashtoreth. But God's destruction of Tyre was so complete, we don't know what Tyre did to deserve punishment. So let's see what else the Bible says about Tyre. The prophet Isaiah lived around 740 BC to 701 BC, roughly. That is a little under 300 years before Babylon attacked. We don't know exactly when this was written, but we should be able to get a feel for what was going on. Isaiah 23, 1-5. Cry loudly, you ships of Tarshish. Your port of Tyre is destroyed. Word has come to the ships of Cyprus. Be silent, you inhabitants of the coastland, you merchants of Sidon. Your messengers have crossed the sea. The grain of Tyer is on the Mediterranean. The harvest of the Nile River is brought to Tyre. Tyre became the market of the nations. Be ashamed, Sidon, because the stronghold by the sea has spoken. I've never been in labor or given birth. I've raised no sons. I've brought up no daughters. When the news reaches Egypt, the Egyptians will shudder over the news about Tyre. And if we skip to the end, Isaiah 23, 17 and 18, at the end of 70 years, the Lord will come to help Tyre. Then she will go back to earning money as a prostitute. She will become a prostitute for all the world's kingdoms. Her profits and her earnings will be turned over to the Lord for his holy purpose. It won't be stored or hoarded. Her merchandise will belong to those who live in the presence of the Lord, so that they will have plenty of food and expensive clothing. A lot of warnings and mourning, but no real info. When God calls them prostitutes, God says the same thing about Israel in regards to idol worship. I don't get the feeling that the same for Tyre. I think it's a matter of they had no principles. They did anything for money. That was not always the case. In Psalms 87, which is believed to have been written around the time of David, Psalm 87:4, the Lord says, I will add Egypt and Babylon, as well as Philistia, Tyre, and Sudan, to the list of those who acknowledge me. Each nation will claim that it was born there. Contrast that with Psalm 83. O God, do not remain silent. Do not turn a deaf ear to me. Do not keep quiet, O God. Look, your enemies are in an uproar. Those who hate you hold their heads high. They make plans in secret against your people and plot against those you treasure. They say, let's wipe out their nation so that the name of Israel will no longer be remembered. They agree completely on their plans. They form an alliance against you. The tents from Edom to Ishmael, Moab and Hagar, Gebal, Ammon and Ammon, Philistia, along with those who live in Tyre. Even Assyria has joined them. They helped the descendants of Lot, Selah. Do to them what they did to Midian, to Sisera and Jabin at the Kishon River. I was not able to locate when Psalms 83 was written. One source says it may have been from the time of David. That does not sound right. It does not sound to me as a warning to stay strong or bad things will happen. It sounds to me like they are actively plotting. Another source said it was from the time of King Jehoshaphat, which sounds better, but I would say unknown. There is a spot that God says clearly what Tyre did and will face punishment for. It also serves as a warning to the world. But there was another nation that went before Tyre and was punished for the same thing Tyre did. But they did not listen, and the world is going down that same path today. Prophecy serves two functions: show the validity of God and His Word, and warn us to avoid trouble. Fulfilled prophecy gives us more proof of the Bible. We need to learn the lessons and warnings of Tyer. What happened to Tyer can happen to any nation or people, and will happen again. What did Tyer do? Right after Jerusalem fell to Babylon, God's response is recorded in Ezekiel 26, 2 and 3. Son of man, Tyer said this about Jerusalem: the city that was the gateway to the nations is destroyed, and its doors are swung open to me. I'll get rich now that it's ruined. So this is what the Almighty Lord says: I am against you, Tyer. I will bring many nations against you as the waves on the sea rise. Jerusalem was conquered by Babylon as part of God's judgment on Israel for its sin. And Tyer celebrated. They saw an opportunity to make money. Think about that. It appears Tyer had no principles, and God's judgment fell. They celebrated Israel's fall, and they celebrated the opportunity to make even more money. Before Tyer, Egypt was the protector of Israel. Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dreams: 7 good years followed by 7 bad years. Israel was the reason Egypt was so wealthy and prosperous. A time that brought all the other kingdoms to their knees, Egypt sold them food. Exodus 1, 8 through 10. Then a new king, who knew nothing about Joseph, began to rule in Egypt. He said to his people, "There are too many Israelites, and they are stronger than we are. We have to outsmart them, or they'll increase in number. Then, if war breaks out, they will join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country." Egypt turned on Israel, and God's judgment fell in the form of 10 plagues, and their army being destroyed. Did any of you ever notice that Pharaoh did not die when the angel of death came through? There was a civil war, and a new Pharaoh came to power. And what happened to Egypt? After Israel left, the Hyksos conquered them without a fight. Historians do not know why Egypt was not able to put up a fight. They were traditionally such a very strong military power. It's almost as if their whole army was cast into the sea. Go figure. But God said for Ezekiel to say something about Egypt as well. Ezekiel chapter 30, verses 6 through 8. This is what the Almighty Lord says: all Egypt's allies will die. Egypt's strength will disappear. People will die in war from Megiddo to Said, declares the Almighty Lord. Egypt will become the most desolate country in the world, and Egypt's cities will lie in ruins. They will be ruined more than other cities. Then they will know that I am the Lord, because I will set fire to Egypt, and all their defenders will be killed. God was sending Babylon at Egypt as well. God was not done with Egypt's punishment. Running out of time, so I don't want to chase that rabbit too far. That brings the last part of Ezekiel 26, 6b. And finally, they will know that I am the Lord. They know, but will not admit it. That is why they are trying to make Tyer look like it's there. In trying to make Tyer look like there is a real city there, they are showing and admitting that there is a God. And they know it. They admit it by trying to hide it. If you want to read the whole text of God's judgment to Tyer, the 2.5 chapters, Ezekiel 26:1 through 28:19. If you want to read that on your own, you can, but by no means are we done. Genesis 12:3. I will bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you. Through you, every family on earth will be blessed. Egypt and Tyer were blessed through Israel. When they turned on God's chosen people, God turned on them. Right now, we see people and governments attacking Israel, claiming there is a genocide, which means to kill off the population group. Under Israel's control, the Arab population went up. I'm not using the word Palestinian. First off, there is no P in Arabic. Palestine don't exist. It's a foreign word. The area was called that after Israel's third rebellion against Rome. When they reconquered Israel for the third time, as punishment, Rome said, fine, you don't get to exist anymore. And they changed it from Israel, adding insult, renaming after their old enemy, the Philistines. The World Court issued an arrest warrant for Israel's prime minister because of these lies. And the United Nations took a vote on whether Israel had rights to its own land. Mexico's diplomat was ordered to vote that Israel's land didn't belong to them. Confused, he contacted Mexico's government asking why. He said, our heritage is based on theirs, but he was told what to do. The time came and he voted on what he believed. He said Israel does have the right to the land God gave them. The next day he was recalled and fired by the Mexican government. And we are not even done. I saw someone who had been on several TV shows, podcasts, talking about returning to traditional Christian family values, very open about the Bible and his belief in it. He had all the buzzwords about Jesus. What did he say about Israel? This is a quote. Genesis 12:3 says, bless God's people, not talking about the government. In fact, we can't support Israel if we want to honor God. In Revelation, the Jews embrace the Antichrist. If we support them, we will be supporting the system the Antichrist sets up. That in itself is a heresy. That is not what happened in Revelation. The reason the Antichrist turns on the Jews is they won't bow down and worship him. They don't embrace his system. They go along with it for a while, as does everyone else left behind after the rapture, to make it clear who we're talking about. But because the Jews don't embrace the Antichrist, he turns on them. Given what has happened in the past to nations who turned on Israel, I ask you, what do you think God meant when he said, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse? That is no different than saying, since the Jews killed Jesus, we have to. And that was an argument used by people who claimed to serve God. There are many nations that ran afoul of Genesis 12:3. One of the most blatant is Great Britain. You may have heard of them. They had an empire that at the height, almost a quarter of the world's landmass was under their control. It varied at times, but for the most part, they were Christian and friendly to Jews. In World War II, they made an agreement with Jewish leaders. After the war, they would reform Israel. But then they made a deal with the Arabs, that Israel getting their land back part was removed. God noticed Israel was reformed anyway, and with the end of World War II, the British pound was no longer the international currency. Their empire scattered to the wind, and in the 1960s, they kicked God out of their country completely. Then they basically collapsed. Heresies are abounding. We must be sure we know the Bible is reliable. God is on the throne. We need to know what the Bible actually says. We need to support Israel and make disciples of all nations. Websites are easy to change, and a lot of them I've seen are posting false information. What I've posted here is the truth. What happened? I have no doubt that there will be people who will say, oh no, this didn't happen. Palestinians originated from here, or had nothing to do with the Philistines. No, that is what happened. That is the truth. What you do with it is up to you. Do you want God's favor or God's judgment?